So I feel like now, after these opening remarks, we've gotten a relatively comprehensive picture of the different aspects of hybrid warfare. We've talked a little bit about what NATO and the EU can and are doing in response. But I think that at the very elementary level, as Mr. Sikarulica said, the threats are country specific. Therefore, the responses to some degree also have to be country specific. So when we, just like in the NATO-Washington Treaty, the primary responsibility is of every ally is to defend itself. So with hybrid warfare as well, the nation state is the one that must put in place the elementary measures that are necessary. So with that, Mr. Rinkevicius, Lithuania has been taking several steps at the country level as well, I believe, to combat this threat, including reinstating mandatory military service for the next 5 years, as well as recently opening your first LNG terminal, which opened in, was it December 2014? And which has effectively broken the monopoly on gas supply to the Baltic states from Russia. So can you talk a little bit about those two initiatives, how they help to mitigate the threat of hybrid warfare at the national level, maybe what other steps you've taken, and maybe what other countries can and should do as well?
Yeah, touched upon energy. Indeed, it's something very important. You can be independent, you can be a member of EU, NATO, but if you have monopoly with regard to the energy supplies, that means you're really not independent. And this is like ballot system. If it depends on the single source, it's becoming a problem. And it took 25 years for us to make more tangible projects. There were some projects in Lithuania as well. It was oil terminal, for instance, very, very small, nevertheless, it was. But as you rightly mentioned, this LNG terminal, that kind of breakthrough, I would say, the revolution in the region, because capacity is 4 BCM, it's much more than we need nationally, we can share with neighbors. Estonia also has some contracts, and 20% of gas supply is going through the terminal. I hope Latvians will do the same, because we really have opportunity, so to say, to share. But the main thing that the process is more transparent, more competitive, better for consumers. And the main thing that Gazprom has no monopoly anymore, and cannot play such a game that it was so far. And that was immediately reflected with regard to the prices, and proposals were more fair, and this is really important to note. So this is something we can mention as national efforts, as you said. So altogether we have to do more. And when we were talking in our midst about our strategic projects, so we really in Europe, in European Union, we have very good roads, we have very good railway system, also some peculiarities, by the way. But in regard to the energy security of 19th century infrastructure, so to say, because there are a lot of energy islands. We are an energy island literally because of the reasons, not anymore, because of the breakthrough and gas, so to say, market is established, was never ever in the region, but because of other means. But there are other islands, for instance, I don't know whether it's here somebody from Spain, but in Spain there are many LNG terminals, but there's bad connections with the continent, and again kind of island. So many peculiarities, and we should really take it very seriously to have the strategic projects and to do our part as well. Coming back to Baltic region, I have to mention, I said 25 years, too much. It was a lobby, what to do, not for us to make sure that we will not do anything. And there were some corrupt cases, there was some pressure for politicians. A lot of leverages were used in order to keep this monopoly. Now it's moving, and we have another examples to mention. Let's say electricity bridges with Sweden, so to say, connection to Lithuania and to all Baltic states. So we'll be able to, upon developing infrastructure, to have an electricity market. Also electricity bridge with Poland, one more addition. Gas, so to say, connections with Poland by 2020, also very important. But again, you need infrastructure. With regard to electricity, we also have some peculiarities in Baltic states because of synchronization. We still operated by Russian operator because of this old system. So you can have infrastructure, you can have everything developed, but if it's not synchronized, again, it's not yet, so to say, where we should be. A lot of problems. But energy, you mentioned, yes, we should do nationally. We are doing nationally. Yes, we have ambitious and costly projects with our neighbors in the region, also backed by European money, very important. This is in the field of energy. By the way, again, I mentioned this Nord-Balt, as we are saying, cable with Sweden to the bottom of Baltic Sea, which is under construction, and it will be built, will finish by the end of this year. It's very important. But again, strange things. Our friends and neighbors, Russians, are having exercises in the Baltic Sea and doing that very intensively. Last month in April, there were exercises 26 days out of 30 in the month by our exceptional economic zone, which is not a big deal. You can have exercises, it's legal. If it's reported in time, if it's done rightly, it's fine. But you know, usually from time to time they entering into our exceptional economic zone, which is also not a big deal because it's free sailing. Anybody can do whatever wants in this economic zone, just with the one so to say exception. You cannot hinder others. You cannot disrupt others what they're doing. And we're building cable, as I said. And this is a very simple thing. So they're having exercises, not reporting, but entering economic zone and ordering other ships to change the course. Sometimes these ships, those who involved in the construction of the cable. And that's happening repeatedly, I would say. We sent 4 notes, usually no response to that. And again, the method of testing. You know, it's also testing what we will do, how we will react. If we will not react, so will be another actions. So mentioning this energy project, I can also mention methods, which are hybrid. You can call them whatever scientifically, not a big difference. But the essence that we are really hindering what we are doing in normal life is really try to disrupt for things what happening, and really very much concerning. Energy, it's one segment. Cyber, it's close to your heart, I know, understand, but we also have our national center. We're cooperating with your center. What would be nice and excellent if we would be able to interlink with European capabilities somehow, European Union, because here we again having some competition. I don't know how to call it, but it's such a bad thing. I'm speaking also from the perspective of small country, and member of EU, member of NATO, 22 members of so to say, European Union, also members of NATO. 22 members of NATO, if I correctly remember, right? Out of 28. So almost all. So, and we're talking about separate systems usually, separate centers. Sometimes we are trying to cooperate. There are some reasons why we are not doing. Definitely there are political peculiarities in that. I will not go deep into this side. I'm talking very pragmatically, how to preserve, how to save money of taxpayers. Very simple. How to make it more efficient, how not to duplicate, and name it. Whatever we will talk. As former Minister of Defense, for instance, I remember when we were discussing, now it's European Defense Agency, but I remember it was very typical and so to say characteristic when we were trying to find a title to this agency. There were two options, frankly. Initially, some colleagues suggested to call it European Agency for Procurement. It's clear what they would like to have in mind in this agency. Others were talking, and we were with them. I know Baltic states all, we were with them. European Agency for Capabilities, European Capabilities Agency, just to develop capabilities and really to contribute to common, so to say, basket of what we're doing, because we have really not too much, frankly speaking, all together. And we really should do more quality, not to compete. So capabilities agency, and was, again, no agreement between procurement and capabilities, and we found this invention as European Defense Agency. Okay, it's fine, and we as a ministers and other, so to say, our representatives talking in this format, and in NATO also talking and having a lot of projects. For instance, rapid reaction forces. It's a NATO response force in NATO. Also VJTF or Spearhead or whatever forces we're talking. And in the European Union, we have battle groups. Different sizes, different, so to say, certificate procedures. But for the small countries, it's not sufficient money to do in parallel. You know, you always would like to do the same. And for me, as a Minister of Foreign Affairs or former Minister of Defense, not a big difference what the flag will be raised, the European Union or NATO, if it's an important mission, so to say. And to send troops which are ready on standby, for instance, in rapid reaction, it's possible theoretically, practically not possible because of different, as I said, standards. And again, it's a stupid thing, let me call me like that. Such a stupid thing because of some, if you would have too much money, you know, but money, again, restricted. We're talking about need to reach 2% of GDP in defense spendings and always placing Estonia as an example. So let's also play Estonia again, 2%, it's fine. By the way, not less important how you're using this money, but it's another story. So let's reach this benchmark, but sometimes some countries even decreasing. So we are increasing ambitions. Today we're talking about modern challenges, which is in addition to conventional threats, are really expanding our scope of our interest and responsibility and cutting budgets and also complaining that Americans not coming to help, also forgetting Europe, withdrawing forces, and why they should pay for our security, frankly speaking. How many percent of NATO bills Americans paying? 70% or more, something like that probably. Why they should do that? They have a lot of business back home. Social care, medical care, name it. They also have threats, also have interests around the world. I'm not advocating for Americans, but just trying to realize and understand why they should pay for our security. Let's also do ourselves. So a lot of questions and a lot of issues coming back to your question, what we are nationally doing, what we can do nationally, a lot of things, At least to have consensus among all political forces to do better. We do have in Lithuania. I'm happy to say that since very beginning, I would say since 1990s, early 90s, we were so lucky to have consensus among all spectrum of political parties to go along these two ways to European Union and NATO, and did that in spite of all differences, political spectrum, and used all leverages to prepare our country for the membership. And now I'm telling to our friends, I don't know whether I know it's from Georgia, it's my old friends in Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, when I'm talking and trying to find arguments how not to lose motivation, how to still, so to say, preserve this passion of reforms when sometimes you are demotivated, sometimes no promises coming, right? But I'm always reminding, for Georgians, for instance, look, in NATO documents we have wording that Georgia will be NATO member. And very difficult to delete this sentence, frankly speaking. We're not allowed to do that. This is very important. But look, it's really a very serious promise. I know the question when, but my point is about the promise. So in my way, I'm telling to many audiences the story when I was in NAC, it was recently, but previously I was also ambassador of this partnership, PFP, in NATO, and during the process of pre-accession, and when we were asking to open this open door of Article 10 of NATO Treaty, and I was told many times by future allies, forget it, you will never be NATO member. I was told in 1999, for instance, I remember. Never. You said, we like your country, you are okay also, and your freedom fight is okay, fine, but look at the map, look at the map. Never ever, have other interests, you will never be NATO member. And with these promises, we needed to conduct reforms, that's my point. So telling to Georgians, to Ukrainians, to others, you must do everything you can do, not to complain, not to look around, not to point to somebody who is guilty. Try to do your best, because time will come. In our case, time has come very strangely after 9/11, by the way. Who can tell why? But this is really after 9/11, after 2001, the Terror Acts was really, let me use this word, reset, very nice word, with another meaning. so reset in the mindset, and our allies realized that they need more friends, more allies, in spite of size, in spite of everything, because fight with terrorists is something very important. It's really long and really strategic, and borders do not mean anything. We really should be all together. So the time came and we were invited. If we would not be ready by the time when invited, who will be to blame? Just us. So I'm telling to Georgians and Ukrainians, be ready and time will come. Be patient and wait. Not wait, do something nationally, and also collectively. We will help because there are a lot of friends, not only in this room and elsewhere, and we are condemned for the bright future, frankly speaking.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister, for those interesting remarks. You spoke about the domestic consensus that exists. Consensus is also, of course, very relevant in the NATO context, where to deal with new challenges, you also need a consensus from member states that this is a challenge that NATO should be involved in. So you spoke about, Ambassador Dukaru, about how when your division was first being created, some allies were thinking, why should we deal with this particular problem? Is this really something that we want NATO's foot in the door with? So currently your division, as I understand, deals with terrorism, cyber defense, energy security, and weapons of mass destruction. My question to you is whether there have been any lessons learned thus far from the Ukraine crisis and the Russian Federation's use of hybrid warfare, where this ambit of your division could be extended to other new threats. One possibility is the use of unmanned aerial systems that has occurred so far very effectively for artillery targeting in the Ukrainian crisis, for example. I'm wondering if NATO is looking forward, learning lessons from this particular crisis, looking forward so that it can be proactive in the future, so that we start dealing with challenges before they occur, preparing for them, and learning from this particular one in advance.
Well, let me start in answering this question by mentioning that this response to the complexity of hybrid warfare is dealt in NATO, as I mentioned, in a comprehensive approach, so it's dealt by more than one division, definitely more than the Emerging Security Challenge Division. I would say that it's the Defense Policy and Planning Division that is in the lead, because we have to address this and link this with our broader adaptation and transformation in the alliance and included in the defense planning. But I would say that, for example, PDD, Public Diplomacy Division, has a huge role in developing the strategic communications aspect of this approach. And of course, Emerging Security Challenges Division, beyond just having this section that you mentioned, cyber, energy security, counter-terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, it also is mandated with the horizon scanning through the strategic analysis capability, also a couple of programs, including Science for Peace and Security. And here, we are putting forward the impact of these new technologies, the kind of, I would say, even disruptive impact in terms of the classical way of addressing aspects of defense planning and defense approach. And it's not just a role of UAVs. We also provided some analysis on potential impact of 3D printing, the evolving of 3D printing technologies, especially in link with terrorism, for example, UAVs as well. So the more these technologies, the easier it is to get access to them, and the cheaper it is to employ them, the more difficult it is to establish a certain coherent regime and do some norms development. So I think we are in the beginning. We have addressed it in a number of analysis, and these aspects are advancing, they're definitely now in the mix of our approach towards hybrid warfare, and their relevance is advancing higher on the agenda of this subject, very much as cyber has evolved from something very little understood or very little comprehended into a subject that now is very much on the political agenda. Just to mention that 2 years ago, maybe the NAC was addressing 1 session per year to cyber, and now it's probably 10 plus or something like that. And people understood that these evolving, these new technologies that with high impact and capacity of generating fast evolving threats have to be addressed in a dynamic fashion. And another aspect, also in partnership with other international organizations, in partnership with partner nations, but also with industry, academia, and the think tank community. So there is a change of mind, a new way of doing business. In cyber, it's clear. I mean, if you look into the policy of cyber policy of last year, there was the launch of the NATO Industry Cyber Partnership, a distinct dimension, which was very hard to conceive only 2 years before. But there's this understanding that in these domains, especially this partnership, this team work is key. And speaking about partnership with international organizations, I want to, Minister Linkevičius expressed a bit of a frustration that maybe it's not enough, and it's definitely, I would probably say it is not enough. On the other hand, I would say that comparatively to where we were, especially in the NATO-EU framework, we learned a lot. We learned a lot from our practical cooperation in operations. We learned also a lot that there are a lot of very concrete practical things can be developed even beyond the difficulties of overcoming some political aspects that were mentioned. For example, in the cyber domain, we have a structured cooperation with the European Union. We're even discussing about establishing some mechanism of technical agreement for cooperation between NATO, TC, and CERT-EU is part of our action plan, and it's explored and has to be approved under consensus, and consensus is a difficult process. But once things are decided under consensus, then the drive behind this is very, very strong. So I think we're getting better, but I agree that there's much more to do to adapt, to modernize, including in the speed with which we take decisions and the way we actually are able to forge consensus in more efficient manner.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ambassador Ducaru. I think I'll take a question from our Twitter wall for Mr. Sikaruliță. A delegate from the audience has asked whether hybrid attacks...
I hope it's not the fake account from the Russian.
No. I have the name. I'm not sure if I should say it or not. Should hybrid attacks be addressed with hybrid methods or conventional warfare?
Well, it depends, of course. I think that, of course, there are the two types of hybrid. Estonians are much more skillful in this than Georgians. First is if cyber attack is targeting the critical infrastructure, that may interrupt and even interrupt the functioning of the very important services, or even kill many people. Then it's really different level of threat. If it's propagandistic, what we see a lot, then of course, I mean, it's the level of threat is lower. It doesn't kill people. So, well, I personally think that, of course, I'm not in the government no more, and can elaborate freely that, yeah, there could be cyber attacks that may require a hard response. If you are just destroying the big dam, and that may kill or that kills the thousands of people, and then you know that much better than I do, that it's really technically possible, then of course, I mean, sometimes it may require some hard response. Of course, I mean, I'm not speaking of you know, some fake accounts writing some disinformation and spreading around. I mean, sometimes it may not even require cyber response.
Okay. You touched upon cyber attacks maybe requiring conventional responses, and interestingly enough, at the NATO Wales Summit in September 2014, the countries declared that cyber attacks have gotten to the point where they can threaten Euro-Atlantic stability, can rise to the level of conventional attacks, and can be subject to an Article 5 response. So I think NATO is well on top of its sort of political messaging on that particular topic as well. So now, after this quite extensive picture of hybrid warfare and all of its different elements, I'm wondering if anybody else in the audience has questions that they want to ask to our esteemed panelists. We have a few minutes left still. I'll take 3 questions at a time. Feel free to ask questions related to, or if you didn't get your question chosen from the Twitter wall again. So we'll start up here. We'll move next to the lady in the middle over there, and then once again to this side.
Good afternoon. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your opinions. I have 3 questions.
Can you introduce yourself before you begin as well?
Sorry. My name is Robert Ivica Šušić, and I'm coming from Montenegro. My first question is for Your Excellency, Mr. Linkevicius. Can you tell me something about the new reactions rapid force that Lithuania has launched? And now the other 2 questions are both for Georgian representative and again you. Is there any regional maybe cooperation which deals with the hybrid warfare threats? And the second question is, what is the public opinion, or is there any awareness when it comes to the hybrid warfare threats? Thank you.
So since our friend, the Montenegrin colleague, has asked 3 questions at once, I think I'd rather pass the torch immediately to answer these questions.
You had in mind rapid action forces? Yes, briefly, we had our own sorts of special forces, but we created rapid reaction forces, which would react from 2 hours to 24 hours if needed. So that could be our contribution. Also, we came back to conscript service, as you know, which we abolished in 2008, and well received by public. You're asking about public reaction. It was more than half of our public in favor, which usually, if you have more duties in the society, it's not very popular. But this is well accepted, and drafts, first, so to say, conscripts will start to serve by the end of the summer, but now many volunteers also appeared. They want to serve in the army, also ladies, by the way, which is also, for them it's not obligatory, but believe me, as a former Minister of Defense, I can tell you, the ladies in uniforms, they are very motivated, very good soldiers, those who really devoted for this profession. And I believe it's a quite big asset for the armed forces. So these are steps. And in regard to the coordination and the fights with hybrid, I believe we shouldn't invent wheel here. We have to address issue where we are, because we are in the alliance, those who are in NATO, and we're analyzing these issues. If you would ask General Breedlove, who is excellent commander in my view, she's Supreme Allied Commander Europe, he would tell you that he really understands this challenge properly, and we really should analyze, we should do that jointly, share better practices, experiences, and we are doing that. After events in Ukraine in particular, I would say. After these strange movements of green men, white tracks, whatever, it's what's never before. There's something what's happening in the country and the government distancing from what's happening. Even now, by the way, after visit of Secretary Kerry, we talked to Secretary Kerry, and I listened to the coverage by Russia about this this visit, and frankly speaking, no big changes, because Russia again repeated that they're not party to the conflict. They again said that Russian troops are not on Ukrainian soil. And they added what they added many times, that they are ready to push those conflicting sides, because they are not party to the conflict, but those conflicting sides, Ukrainians and this separatists or terrorists, whatever you can call them, they will push them to implement Minsk Agreement of February, which is also a big mistake, because we do have more agreements in Minsk, not only in February, which is the weakest one, but there are more before. And they must be implemented. Until they will not be implemented, we have to stand united and to continue with our policy. It's another story, but you're coming back, not to go too far away from your question about are we coordinating? Yes, we do. Is it sufficient? No, not yet. But we are coming to that.
Thank you very much. As a graduate of Estonian conscription, as a reserve sergeant myself, I'm very happy on a personal level that Lithuania has chosen to reinstate it, and that there's such an interest in volunteerism and military service in Lithuania. So congratulations on that front. Would either of the other two delegates like to touch on these questions, or shall we take the next ones from the delegates?
I would not have anything to add.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so I believe we had next question over there, please.
The great panel. My name is Jūratė Čižauskaitė, and I would like to pose my question to His Excellency Mr. Linas Linkevičius. Malonus čia matyti. Our President Dalia Grybauskaitė, as well as yourself, have often used a very strong language when describing events in Ukraine, as well as Russia's actions. So my question goes, while I admire the strong standpoint Lithuania is taking, I wonder what kind of implications it has on Lithuanians' relationship with other European and NATO countries. Maybe as a foreign minister you can share your experiences and describe a little bit the situation. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You know, in our midst, be it European Union or NATO, we are discussing issues, and definitely that not always similar views and thoughts. It's not a big secret. And sometimes also not a secret, we are in minority. Also true. We are not abusing this role, because to be in minority is not a big deal, it's not a privilege, so to say. It's not something we would like to seek. But sometimes we're doing that because we feel that we must. And I believe nothing aggressive in that. You said that we are keeping a tough stance. Yeah, but we are calling these actions as aggression, Russian aggression against Ukraine. Is it too strong or too weak? This is true. We can close eyes and not to call it like that. It will be less, so to say, tough, maybe more polite, but it will not be true. You are going too far away from the true. That is also one of the problems. And wishful thinking prevailing against of reality. This is also very bad. You can postpone this headache 1 week, one year, but it will not be solved. It will not address the issue as it is. This is one of our shortcomings, I believe, in our collective thinking. We would like to present things better than they are in the reality. And the reality is really bad. And let's say openly. And by the way, it's not improving in spite of all these efforts. Because what we're facing here, not here, but in our continent, in Europe, it's really something beyond any imagination. In the 21st century, it cannot happen. And again, I would tell as a president of UN Security Council, I can say that very, so to say, big frustration, because even in these important organizations, which are supposed to stay on guard of peace system in the world, of legal system, we cannot do nothing, frankly. We started to discuss issue in Ukraine, again, coming back to Ukraine, during our presidency last year in February. And it was not so easy to put on the agenda the issue, believe me, because it's consensus organization and very complicated bureaucracy. We started at the end of February, and after that there were around 30 meetings, 30 meetings on Ukraine, various settings, UN Security Council. And what is the outcome? So my question, what we are doing in these organizations, what we're discussing, and what is the Of course, there is some effect because we're making this widely public. We're raising this issue to the highest level. This is really important, but we cannot affect sometimes. So coming back to your question, yes, radical positions, minority positions, not always helpful. We need to seek common ground, common denominator. But you know, we can discuss what is more important, unity or decency. What is more important, to do something, try to do something, try to be sometimes even in minority. But it cannot be a big deal to have unity to do nothing, you know. It's also unity. Let's be united and do nothing. Is it a beauty? I'm not sure. So a lot of questions, but yeah, but we are democratic organizations, so we're very proud about our organizations where we are able to discuss, we are able to, respectively of our size and potential, economic potential, we really can speak what we think, and we are respected, and we respect other views which are not always the same, but this is exactly the nature of democratic organizations. So we feel comfortable. Me personally, definitely, I feel comfortable in these discussions, and I believe how it should be.
Thank you very much. So let's move to over here. Our Ukrainian delegate was almost mandated to ask a question in this panel, so go ahead.
Patrik. My name is Denis Pashenko. I'm from Ukraine, and first of all, as Ukrainian, I want to thank everyone who helps us. I mean, independent state, collective body as NATO. We do understand your support, we feel your support, we do understand price you are paying for your support, and we will remember about it. And my question is about definitions. You said already about new definitions we started to use last time. Hybrid warfare, hybrid attack, hybrid battle, enemies, etc., etc. And what do you mean about hybrid victory? What does it mean according to our conflict, Ukrainian-Russian conflict, it's hybrid war? How can we understand who will win in this war, in hybrid war? What is your opinion about it? Thank you.
I don't know what hybrid victory means. I know what are the methods. When we are talking about hybrid threats, we're talking about threats against us, about methods which are used against us, which are sometimes not regular, not usual, and sometimes even not fair. So there was a question before what we should do to act accordingly or to do something else. I believe we should do something else. We are rules-based societies. We should respect law. And if we have soccer game or football, if you wish, and we have rules, and we are playing football, another side playing rugby and wrestling a bit, we shouldn't start playing also rugby and wrestling. That's my answer. You know, this is our limitation, but this is exactly what we cannot do otherwise. We cannot use methods which are. We shouldn't send green men to the country which decided to choose customs union, for instance, and we didn't send to Armenia when they decided. No, just to put concrete example, you remember when Armenians were preparing to sign association agreement, and suddenly they said, no, we will not do anymore, and we'll go to customs union. And we didn't send the green man to Armenia trying to remind them that, look, behave, you know, you're doing something wrong. No, vice versa. I met with the minister immediately after that, and we discussed how to preserve what was done before. We had European Union presidency at that time, by the way. So we were told that we will do our best in order to accommodate them, because we would like to see Eastern Partnership alive. And one more point, which will be decided, I believe, soon in the summit in Riga, one of the features of Eastern Partnership is differentiation, because all these 6 partners are very different. Ukrainians, Belarusians, Armenians, Azerbaijanis, Moldavians, Georgians, everyone very different, with very different motivation, very different ambitions, and here's the reality. So we will do our best, not interfering into their internal affairs, not to doing reforms for them, not to deciding for them. It's very important. When I'm going to Georgia or Moldova, I'm never trying to impose our thinking. I'm always trying to explain our way, and if somebody interested, we can share. No more. These are the limits. And we will not apply any hybrid methods in reaction to the hybrid attacks from other sides.
Thank you. I'd like to actually extend this question over to Ambassador Sikarulice. In Georgia in 2008, we had a conventional attack, but also hybrid elements involved, right? Including, as Ambassador Dukaru mentioned, cyber attacks. So in that case, can we say that the 2008 war was a hybrid victory for Russia over Georgia? Or would you say that the conflict, or so-called, is continuing at a lower level because it's not, because it's not, it's not completed, finished. The elements are still there between Georgia and Russia, would you say?
Fight is not over yet. Well, one of columnists, I think it was Ed Lucas, but maybe I'm mistaken. He wrote after 2008, the Russians learned a lot after Georgia-Russia war. Georgians learned a little bit. EU learned nothing. That was his understanding of the situation. Well, I don't think that, and I completely agree with Linus, you can't retaliate with all those elements the Russians are using while fighting hybrid war. It's not even the sending green mass. Of course, you can't even do your own propaganda because the democratic countries don't do propaganda, and then it's impossible. And it's, playing the same game as the Russians play is not really the right answer. But what would be the right answer? After, and I'm also optimistic. After attack on Ukraine, after occupation of Crimea, and then after the invasion in eastern Ukraine, approach is more serious. There is absolutely agreed that there are the contours of the common strategy, which is not on place yet, but means it's are being elaborated. I do agree that that probably there will be right approach. Well, in last 10 years, for example, defense budgets of all NATO member countries were coming down, while authoritarian states, not only Russia but also other authoritarian states, were raising their budgets. And then many people were warning, issuing warnings about it, but I mean, there was not really on the agenda. And there are also other elements that need for certainty in different parts of the region. If you want to characterize with one word what is happening now in, non-NATO member neighbors of Russia, it's uncertainty. There was the feeling of uncertainty, that's really we have to admit, and that makes information warfare much more effective when there is the overall feeling of uncertainty and combined with the information war. So, but I'm really very optimistic because first of all, as I said, that the strategy is being crafted, and I think that it will be implemented, and then to answer our Ukrainian colleague is that what would be the victory, not in hybrid war, but the victory once Ukraine is free, member of NATO, member of EU, and Russian troops out, that's going to be victory, and I can see it. Not really far away, just really very close future.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. A very positive finale, but it appears that Mr. Dukaru would like to have an intervention here as well.
Yeah, I found the question interesting. Of course, we did not discuss of any definition of hybrid victory in NATO, so I will just have maybe share a couple of personal opinions now that you put this question. I would rather refer to hybrid outcome, and then I try to link it with the term that you suggested. So and of course, any victory should be related to, or outcome should be related to the objectives that the entity that initiated the action, hybrid action, had in mind. And there are a couple of questions. Are these outcomes really a victory? For example, we spoke about Georgia. We had in the aftermath of the war in August 2008, these so-called independence declared by the two regions. Did anyone who on the international scale recognize this independence? Or the same in the case of Crimea. Of course, it has generated high level of popularity of the president of Russia. But what about the relationship people to people between Russians and Ukrainians? And I was looking yesterday in the news clips about the Nemtsov, so-called Nemtsov report, and this was one of the key strategic questions. So from the strategic point of view, how much has been achieved? So this is a big question. Is this outcome, has it really strategic value? Could it be linked with the epithet of victory? I don't know. If you put hybrid in front of victory, you're already diminishing the quality of the word victory in any case, and you can even give it a kind of pejorative, let's say, meaning, so to say. So again, I'm just trying to think aloud and use everyone's common sense because this is an interesting aspect. What is the real outcome, and what is the real outcome also from the point of view of what happens on the international arena, since it has the capacity to affect international order? Then again, strategic outcome is not really a good one, and who knows, it could even backfire at a certain moment to an entity that might champion this technique or this approach, hybrid warfare, at the same time, especially since now hybrid warfare is sometimes associated also with terrorist groups such as ISIL, and everyone can be vulnerable to such groups, and from this point of view, you know, the backfire effect should be also taken into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. So as interesting as this has been, I'm afraid that we've even run 5 minutes late. I understand all of our panelists have very busy schedules today, and so I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Thank everybody listening by live stream as well. I feel like we've gotten a good overview of what hybrid warfare is, the Ukrainian crisis. We've seen a lot of the different elements, but in the end, I feel like we've also found that there are still some questions that need to be resolved. So food for thought, not only to the ministers and high-level policymakers, but also to the young delegates that are here searching for new and compelling solutions. And indeed, the Ukrainian conflict is not over yet, and so we can't say that there has been a hybrid outcome as of now. So I believe this is food for thought, but